This is Liberty Square at the Magic Kingdom of Walt Disney World in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. This is themed like a colonial American town at the time of the Revolution. While it may be the smallest land in the Magic Kingdom, as a history and presidential buff, this area itself is kinda one of the greatest places ever. This is the Liberty Tree. It is actually over 100 years old and was moved here from a different area on the property, and it's based on the actual Liberty Tree that was in Boston. It was there in 1765 that the first act of defiance against the British government took place. And this is a replica of the Liberty Bell. It is cast from the mold of the actual Liberty Bell made in 1989. The centerpiece is the Hall of Presidents, one of my personal favorites at Walt Disney World. It was here opening day in 1971, and the building kind of resembles Independence Hall. Walt Disney originally wanted a similar attraction called One Nation Under God at Disneyland, and planned a President's Wax Museum, but then decided to try to make animatronics, but the technology wasn't quite there yet. Eventually, the Imagineers were able to create a more advanced audio animatronic of Abraham Lincoln, and he got his own show at Disneyland that still exists, called Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. But first, in the lobby, they have a President's Museum with some great stuff on loan from some of the big presidential libraries and museums. A replica of Dolly Madison's evening gown, Lou Henry Hoover's evening gown, one of Betty Ford's dresses and her Chinese hand fan. That is Gerald Ford's ski sweater, boots, poles, and hats from the 70s, and Reagan's bolo tie on the right. Dwight D. Eisenhower painted in his spare time, a habit encouraged by Winston Churchill, and he called this one Winter Birches, made in 1968. That is Woodrow Wilson's golf club. He was an avid golfer. And a letter to his Secretary of the Treasury, William McAdoo. George H.W. Bush's horseshoe set. He did really enjoy the game of horseshoes and introduced it to Gorbachev and Queen Elizabeth II. Those are Bill Clinton's running sneakers used while president. These are really impressive. James Monroe's gloves. He used these during his inauguration in March of 1817. Some of Jimmy Carter's arrowheads he collected in the fields of Plains, Georgia. Bill Clinton's dog Buddy's tag from 1997. The Clintons adopted him while they were in the White House. A replica of Richard Nixon's grade school essay from 1925. At age 12, he wrote in here that he wanted to, quote, study law and enter politics for an occupation so that I might be of some good to people. That is George Washington's Society of the Cincinnati dinner plate on loan from Mount Vernon. Washington's knee and shoe buckles worn during the 1780s, so perhaps he would have worn these at the Constitutional Convention. A cameo portrait of Rutherford B. Hayes given to his wife Lucy on their anniversary. FDR's portable telegraph set and vibroplex key from 1933. He used this during his travels throughout his presidency. Thomas Jefferson's freaking pocket watch that he purchased in Paris while ambassador to France. Lyndon B. Johnson's Western boots from the 60s. And that is a bust of Fala, FDR's dog, and he kept that sculpture on a table in the Oval Office. James Monroe's pocket scale and weights. He would have used this in his travels to weigh medicine and even currency at times. George W. Bush's Topps baseball cards he collected when he was young. For the attraction at Disney World, they decided to expand on Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln and Walt's concept and created the Hall of Presidents. The show is half film, but then the animatronics of all 44 presidents come out. And it's the best thing ever.
407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, James K. Polk, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, Benjamin Harrison, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson, Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama. And now we come to the present. Once again, we place our trust in the idea of a president, as we have from the beginning.
My fellow citizens, no event could have filled me with greater anxieties than that notification on the 14th day of that had been repeated by every American president throughout history.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. From the beginning, America has been a nation defined by its people At our founding, it was the American people who rose up to defend our freedoms and win our independence. It is why our founders began our great Constitution with three very simple words: we the people. Since that moment, each generation of Americans has taken its place in the defense of our freedom, our flag, and our nation under God. These are the achievements of the American spirit, the spirit of a people who fought and died to bring the blessings of liberty to all our people. Above all, to be American is to be an optimist, to believe that we can always do better, and that the best days of our great nation are still ahead of us. It's a privilege to serve as the President of the United States, to stand here among so many great leaders of our past, and to work on behalf of the American people.
An office entrusted to each president by us, we the people. Therein lies the genius.
And there's a portrait of everyone's favorite president, Benjamin Franklin. There's a hidden Mickey on the sewer plate. This is the Liberty Bell riverboat, which travels around Tom Sawyer Island. Unfortunately, I did not have enough time to ride it. Liberty Square is also home to the Haunted Mansion, which I have a separate video on, and thanks for watching.